2011 ES350 front brake pads and rotors. What you need to do is jack it up and support it properly. Remove the lug nuts, which are 21 millimeter. And then you need to remove your tires. And then you need to go ahead and get yourself a 14 millimeter socket or a wrench and remove the two caliper bolts. There's one here and one here. Remove those. And after you get those removed, get yourself a decent flat blade screwdriver, pry out on the caliper a little bit, and come over here off to the side and pry it like that. That way it will push the pistons in a little bit, and that will ease your removal of the caliper. Okay, now I get the caliper off. And you want to inspect it. Inspect your pistons. Make sure you don't see no leakage or any rips or tears in your boot, which is pretty decent. What you need to do is get a wire brush, brush it down, get it fairly decent, and then you get an old pad and a C-clamp and squeeze it together, push that piston in. Or if you get the other tool, the ratchet style that pushes it in, you can use that also. And also inspect your brake line, make sure it's not got any cracks in it. Right here, and right here, and there. And follow it up to this one. Usually crack right here, or right there, or right there. All right, so now you get your caliper bracket. That's held on by two 17 millimeter bolts, and they're back here. Right here's one, and then right here's one. You need to remove those. And you can remove your caliper bracket with the brake pads. All right. Depending upon what kind of pad kit you get, make sure you come with all your hardware. These little springs, in case you don't come with them, make sure you keep them. Then you want to remove your pads. Remove your pads out of there. And also, don't throw away any rattle clips. You might have to reuse those if your hardware doesn't come with them. And that would be these right here. And take notice on what section of the pad they are on. If they're on the top or on the bottom. So this would be on the outside. So that would be on the top. All right, so next you need to do is remove your bundle clips hardware. Get those off of there. And you need to clean that mounting surface free of rust. Make sure it looks good. And then go ahead and paint it once you get nice and cleaned up. And also you want to verify that your caliper slide pins aren't frozen. Make sure you can turn them. And this one's pretty stiff, so it might be frozen. Sometimes you'll have to heat them up a little bit and put this in a vise and turn the whole bracket. And if you heat them up too much, it'll melt your boot. So sometimes you have to take the boot off of there with a little screwdriver, and you can heat it up a little bit better. But if you can't get it loose, then you're gonna have to replace it. Okay, this one turns just a little bit. You can keep working back and forth, or you can put a little bit of heat on here, or propane torch, try not to heat up your boot. And you'll see it starting to smoke if you see it getting hot. So once you get a little bit warmed up, just go ahead and work it back and forth and try to pull it straight up. And make sure your vise is tight. Okay, before you go ahead and heat it. You want to make sure that the boot is off the pin, you know, the slide pin, because you don't want it to be stuck on there. And when you wiggle it back and forth, or even do it in a circle, you don't tear your boot, okay? So what I'll do is I'll have my hand on there like that, and I'll pull up on it, twist it back and forth. I was on it for about 5 minutes with heat. And it's coming. And if you heat them up too much and get them really hot, they'll shoot out like a bullet. So you gotta be careful. And that's the one with the bushing on it. Great. Bushing's in there. Hopefully it's not destroyed. Hopefully I can get it out. Careful, it's hot. So clean up your slide pins. Clean up your caliper brackets inside there too. Use a drill bit that fits right in there nice and snug, and drill it out and work it back and forth, and then spray it out with some cleaner, and then go ahead and put some new Seal Glide inside there. Do not pack it. You won't be able to push the pin in, but just get it over the pin and work it in there back and forth. Get your slide pins all cleaned up. Get your new boots and new little insulator on the inside there. My old one was torn. Don't pack it with grease. Just put grease on the pin and work the pin in there back and forth. Make sure it's plenty lubed up, and put some lube on your boots so they seal with the pins. Now the pins are all rusted inside here. Get yourself a little hacksaw blade and rub it in there. Cleans it out pretty good. Get the brackets all nice and cleaned up, and go ahead and spray them, and then let them sit for the paint to dry. And then you can go ahead and work on your rotor. Remove your rotor and clean up your hub. It's going to be packed full of rust. In order to get the rotor off, you'll have to hit it with a hammer. And just in case you don't want it falling on the floor and on your foot, or even on your air hose. Decent sized hammer. Okay. You gotta get that nice and clean and shiny. If it's got any high spots of rust, you need to remove it, because you need to have that to be a nice true surface, so the rotor will spin true. If it's got a high spot or a low spot, it's gonna go like that, and then it transfers to your brake pedal. So you don't want that. So you need to get these cleaned up. I use a die grinder with a disc, and I use the one Brillo pad one that goes over the lug nuts. This style also. And I use this to clean up my calipers also, brackets. The hub is clean as I can get it without actually removing any metal. And once you got it this far, you can go ahead and put a light film of anti-seize all over the hub. Get your pads, get the anti-rattle clips on them. This would be the top side. Clean up your rotor, remove all the shipping oil off it, soap and water. So your caliper brackets, get the hardware, a bundle of clips in there. Start with the inside first and push it down that way. They're spring loaded. Little springs on them. You can use a little screwdriver to help pry it and push it down on there. Be careful, they're really sharp, and they'll cut you. So now that you got those all ready to go, get your rotors on there, get your brackets on there, get them snugged up and then bolted up, and then torque them. Rotor is on and clean, and my piston is pushed back in. Now what you need to do is go ahead and put your pads in on your brackets on the bench. Put this side in first, squeeze this side in there, and you'll have to use a little screwdriver to help pry this section like that. Oh, you have to go like this. Get it inside there. Pry that pad in there, because he always gets hung up on that section right there. Make sure they're in there evenly, and make sure you get them both on. Okay. So next you can go ahead and put these on there and get your bolts started, and then snug them up, and then you want to torque them to 79 foot-pounds. Brackets are on, and go ahead and torque your caliper bracket bolts to 79 foot-pounds. Put your springs on your pads. You might have to hold the pads in while you're doing this, and then you can get your caliper on. And once you get the caliper on there, then you can go ahead and get your little bolts started. Those will be the caliper bolts, and the torque for that is 25 foot-pounds. So, all right, got the calipers on. Sometimes if you have a hard time pushing this pin back in far enough to get the caliper over it, then there's too much grease in there and you can't compress it, okay? So just be aware of that. All right, so these caliper bolts are torqued to 25 foot-pounds, all right? So the next you need to do is the other side, exactly the same way. And then when you get both sides done, you need to put the wheels on, put the lug nuts on, and then you need to torque those to, like, I think it was close to 90 foot-pounds. And then lower the vehicle down, go inside the vehicle, start it up, and push the pedal to the floor a couple times. That way you have a brake pedal when you put it in reverse or drive. So don't just get in it and take off. Make sure you got a good pedal before you go and put it in drive or reverse. And when you're done with that, shut it off, open your hood, go to your master cylinder and double check your brake fluid reservoir and top it off as needed, if needed. Most of the time not. But that's it. That's how you do your front brakes. And hopefully I helped you out. And you've seen my vice grips. They were on the wheel stud. That's to hold my rotor on from falling off and also keeping it straight. I just put it on there very lightly just to hold it in place. That's the only reason why I do that. Okay, so I'm not screwing up the threads or anything. I just barely have them on there. All right, so hopefully I helped you out, and hopefully you can help me out by subscribing to me, and I appreciate it. Thank you.